Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. Now, you might think we're getting a little niche with today's topic. Who gets the land when you die in the wilderness? But trust me, it's going to be surprisingly relevant to all of us, even today.
Oh, absolutely.
We're about to crack open the Book of Numbers and uncover some serious inheritance drama with the ancient Israelites.
You see, inheritance wasn't just about who got dad's stuff back then. It was about power lineage, your entire family's future. These stories offer a fascinating glimpse into a society where those stakes were incredibly high.
We're talking biblical proportions here, literally. So imagine this. The Israelites fresh out of Egypt are on the verge of entering the Promised Land after decades in the desert. They've got a pretty sweet deal with God. He'll provide for them and protect them, but in return, they need to follow his laws.
Makes sense, right?
This agreement, by the way, is what we call a covenant. Think of it like the ultimate contract.
And like any good contract, there are consequences for breaking it. And that's where things get interesting in Numbers chapter 25.
Right, because apparently all those years of wandering made the Israelites a little too friendly with their neighbors, the Moabites. And let's just say the Moabites had a very different idea of a good time, one that involved worshiping other gods. And, well, let's just say things got a bit out of hand.
Now, this wasn't just a matter of breaking curfew or anything like that. This was a direct violation of their covenant with God. The Moabites weren't just offering snacks and good music. They were trying to pull the Israelites away from their faith to weaken them from the inside out.
And you know what they say. If you play with fire, well, in this case, the fire was God's wrath, and he was not happy at the result. A devastating plague rips through the Israelite camp, wiping out a staggering 24,000 people.
It's a stark reminder of just how seriously this covenant was taken. The plague wasn't just a punishment, it was a way to purify the community, to show them the very real consequences of straying from their agreement with God.
But amidst all the chaos and, well, death, we meet a guy named Phineas. He's the grandson of Aaron the high priest, so, good lineage, already a point in his favor. But Phineas, he's not just about family legacy. He sees this Israelite man bringing a Midianite woman right into the heart of the camp. Talk about a power move, right? And Phineas is not having it.
And this is where that blend of personal honor and religious duty really comes into play. Phineas sees this blatant disregard for God's law, and he takes action.
Oh, yeah, he goes full-on action hero, grabs a spear, bursts into the tent where this couple is, and bam, takes them both out. It's brutal. It's dramatic. But here's the thing. The plague stops, immediately.
It's seen as a decisive act that shows Phineas's unwavering loyalty to God. And his reward, he's granted a covenant of peace and permanent priesthood for his descendants. Talk about a reward that keeps on giving, right?
It's like God saying, Phineas, you get it. You understand the assignment.
But it also highlights something we're going to see throughout this whole deep dive, that inheritance wasn't just about material possessions. It was about spiritual authority, social standing, ensuring your family's place in the community for generations to come.
Exactly. And this idea that lineage and divine favor were directly linked to inheritance is going to become even more important as we move forward and meet a family who dared to challenge that very system. Okay, so we've had divine intervention, a plague, and a hero with a spear. You'd think things would settle down a bit, right?
Well, not exactly. This is the Bible, remember. Things are about to get even more interesting.
You're right. Numbers chapter 26 opens with God telling Moses to take a census, and not just any census.
Yeah.
This one is all about figuring out who's eligible to inherit a piece of the Promised Land. Think of it as the ultimate inheritance prep. It's time to figure out who gets what, who gets to claim their stake in the future.
And what's really interesting here is that they're specifically counting all the men over 20 years old, all the guys who are eligible to fight in the army.
That's pretty revealing, isn't it? They're not just tallying up all the heads. They're counting those who can defend the land, who can contribute to the future of their family. So basically, it's like a who's who of the guys who are most likely to inherit something.
Absolutely. It underscores how this was a society where lineage and military strength were key to survival.
But wait, there's a twist. This isn't just about who gets the most land. It's about who gets to inherit it all. Because as it turns out, the rules about inheritance were pretty straightforward until they weren't.
Oh, you're right. And that's where we meet a family that's about to shake things up. Remember, the daughters of Zelophehad.
Now, they're not just some random group of women. Their father, Zelophehad, is deceased totally peacefully, not part of any plagues or rebellions. But here's the catch. He doesn't have any sons.
And that, according to the rules of the time, meant his entire family line was going to disappear. Vanished like it never existed.
And a whole family line was just gone.
Yep. And let's be honest, that would have left his daughters with, well, nothing.
I'm starting to see why these daughters decided they couldn't just accept that.
They go before Moses and they basically say, hold on a second. Our father was a good man. He followed God's laws. Shouldn't we, his daughters, be able to inherit his land? He had no sons, but he had us.
Now that's bold, especially in a society where women had very little power. They're questioning the entire system, basically saying the rules aren't fair.
It's really inspiring, too.
Mm.
You know, they weren't just trying to get what was rightfully theirs. They were making a statement about what justice meant to them, about what it meant to be a true follower of God.
You know, you'd think they'd get shut down, told to go home and find husbands. But this is where the story really takes a turn that's, well, surprisingly progressive.
And what God does next is a total game changer.
So we're left with these 5 daughters, right? They're brave enough to speak up about this, and everyone's kind of looking at Moses like, okay, what now?
Well, you know, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Because even today, what happens next is seen as radical. And we're talking thousands of years ago.
You're not kidding. So what happens? Does Moses stick to the letter of the law?
He brings their case right to God, and God's response is amazing. He sides with the daughters.
No way. He changes the law right then and there.
He does. Right there in Numbers 27.5:11, he makes it clear. If a man dies and doesn't have any sons, the daughters, they get the inheritance. It's a huge moment for these women, and honestly for women in general at that time.
Because this isn't just about them anymore, right? It sets a precedent for everyone going forward.
Exactly. And it kind of changes how you might think about God and the law, too.
Yeah.
God's showing he's not this like inflexible being stuck in his ways.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, I can make adjustments when it makes sense.
Exactly. And it's all about justice and fairness.
Yeah.
And that's something that's still relevant today, don't you think? I mean, think about it.
It really makes you wonder what other rules we might have in our own lives that could use a fresh perspective. But okay, before we get too philosophical here, we've got to talk about the big transition that's coming up. Moses isn't going to be around forever, right?
Oh, that's right. That's Numbers 27.112-23. We see the leadership passing from Moses to Joshua.
A changing of the guard for a whole new era.
And even here in this moment, as Moses is getting ready to, well, meet his fate, it still ties back into that theme of inheritance. It's not just about the physical land. It's about leadership and who carries that forward.
So it's like God's making sure the Israelites are set up for success even without Moses at the helm.
Exactly. It's all connected. From the plague to Phineas and his decisive action to those daughters who spoke up and changed things to finally making sure the next generation is ready to lead. It all goes back to this idea of legacy and making sure things continue in a way that's right and just.
It really makes you think about inheritance in a whole new light, doesn't it? And it's not just some ancient concept. What about us today? What factors should determine who gets what? Is it always about bloodlines, or is there more to it than that?
It's a question that each generation has to wrestle with. What do you think? What would you change about inheritance to make it more just?
It's something to ponder for sure. And on that note, we're going to have to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from ancient plagues and unlikely heroes to bold women who weren't afraid to speak truth to power. It just goes to show you, even those dusty old stories from the Bible can still teach us a thing or two about justice, fairness, and the power of questioning the status quo. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.